Your AI policy is being ignored. Not because it's bad, not because teachers don't care, but because of one mistake that's creating the gap between what you say and what people actually understand. I watched a teacher almost destroy a student's academic record over this exact gap. The AI detector said 100% AI generated. The teacher said cheating. But nobody checked. Did the student even know what no use of AI meant? And somewhere in this gap between what we say and what students understand, we're calling kids cheaters. So here's what we learned. If you're new here, my name is Vaughn Littlejohns. I'm a Director of Technology at Prem International School, and I turn AI overwhelmed teaching staff into confident innovators, step by step, hands-on. I'm partnering with schools like Greycoat Hospital School in London, where we've just completed a 764 stakeholder baseline that's setting the new standard for how schools actually implement AI. So in this video, I'm going to show you why your AI policy is being ignored if you've got one to begin with, and the one mistake that's making everything harder. The exact framework we used at Prem, and that went from resistance to zero pushback in a single training session. But first, I'll show you the real problem, and hint, it's not the students. Then I'll walk you through the traffic light system we co-created. And finally, I'll give you the implementation checklist you can use starting Monday. Even after implementing this traffic light system at Prem, a teacher came to me worried and confused. An AI detector flagged a student's essay was 100%, but they knew this kid, a hard worker, genuine effort. They said, I told them this was a red task, no AI allowed. And I asked one question to them, and I said, did you check if they actually understood what you meant by that? Turns out, the student wrote their essay in their native language, then translated it to English using an AI. They heard no AI, thought, don't use ChatGPT. They didn't realize translation actually counted. So here's what this has taught me. Having a framework isn't enough. You need a conversation to check understanding. We can't assume that when we tell someone something, they understand what we actually meant. This is true for students, it's true for teachers, and it's true for anyone implementing change. And somewhere in that gap between what we say and what people understand, we're calling kids cheaters. Here's what I'm noticing. When teachers feel overwhelmed by AI, they reach for control. Detection software, plagiarism checkers, tools that promise to catch students cheating. But here's the thing, you can't control what students do at home. You never could. Pre-AI, students copied Spark notes, they bought essays online, they got their older siblings to help. We've been trying to police the uncontrollable for years. So what's actually in our control? Clear expectations before tasks, that's it. That's the entire game. But we tend to skip that step. And we hand out assessment, assume the students understand the boundaries, then panic when these boundaries are crossed. I used to do this when I was teaching. I could get frustrated when students would submit their work and it just didn't feel like theirs. You understand your students, but sometimes you just go, this is a bit too much. But when I'm honest with myself, I never actually told them what was acceptable and what wasn't. I just expected them to know. And honestly, they didn't. Now, I've been reading the Daily Stoic every morning since the beginning of the new year. Ancient philosophy, it keeps showing up in modern problems. Now, there's 3 principles that's helped me see this clearly. So, number 1, we need to control our perceptions. Before you go and accuse a student of cheating, ask, did this student actually know this wasn't allowed? That's a different story, and a different response is needed. Number 2, direct your actions appropriately. You can't police everything students do outside of your classroom, but you can design assessments that require understanding and not just output. And number 3, accept what's outside of your control. Students will use AI. That's not even a question anymore. The question is, have you actually taught them when's appropriate and how to use it? This would be called radical agency, the ability to co-create what education looks like instead of reacting to what we're just afraid of. So let me show you what this actually looks like in practice. It's only the 3rd day back from break and I'm settling into work and a Google Chat notification pops up and it reads, I'm allocating you to supervising a student's extended essay, a 4,000 word essay on computer science. No conversation, No, are you interested? No context, just you're doing this. My gut reaction, what the hell do you mean you're allocating me to this? Because here's the thing, when someone tells you what you're going to be doing, you've got no choice, no conversation, no agency, what's your immediate response? Of course it's no, I'm not doing that. Doesn't matter if it's reasonable, doesn't matter if you'd normally say yes. The fact is that you weren't asked means your brain goes into a resistance mode. So I practiced what I'm teaching you now. I controlled my perception. Is this person trying to overload me, or did they just communicate poorly? I directed my action appropriately and I replied, I'm not sure what you're actually meaning by allocating. Can you please explain? They immediately backed up, started having a conversation, not just dictation. And the issue wasn't the task. The issue was how the ask was made. No conversation, no collaboration, and no agency. This is the exact mistake schools make with their AI policies. At Prem, we surveyed nearly 300 stakeholders before rolling out our approach to AI. Students, teachers, parents, leadership, we listened first. I didn't walk into the staff meeting and say, hey, we're all going to use the traffic light system. This is how we're doing it with AI. Just deal with it. That would have been me doing exactly what has just happened to me with the extended essay, dictating, removing agency, and creating resistance. Instead, we consulted, we listened, we co-created. 30 parents in a meeting. What are your concerns? What did you know? Heads of department, how would this land with your teams? What examples would actually help you? Student Leadership Council, what confuses you about AI expectations and what would make this a bit clearer for you? And the senior leadership team, does this actually align with our school's values and what's missing? Once we surveyed everyone, we consulted everyone, that's nearly 300 plus voices. What's your perception of AI? What's your biggest worry and what support do you need? And what we found was students aren't trying to cheat. They're trying to complete tasks without understanding what's expected of them. Teachers aren't resistant to AI, they're overwhelmed by it. And parents aren't against technology, they're worried about the future options for their child. Everyone just needs clarity. So here's what actually was working. We communicated something embarrassingly simple. It's a traffic light system. Red, AI is not allowed. You're building core skills. Amber or yellow, AI is assumed, but you are going to need to do the thinking. Green, AI is part of the assessment. We're actually grading how well you use it. Now, the traffic light system isn't some revolutionary framework I invented. It's one of many communication models for acceptable use of AI. Schools across the world are using variations of it. I learned it from a colleague, Adrian Cotterill, at a conference a few years ago. But here's the difference. If I just told the staff we're going to use this traffic light system now, I would have hit that resistance, that confusion, the same thing that happened to me with the extended essay supervision. Instead, we co-created it together. We adapted it to our context. We created examples with the committee. We showed the red looks like in science, the amber looks like in English, the green looks like in design. My head of school noticed something surprising about the training that I delivered when I rolled this out to the school. Not a single resistant question. People ask clarifying questions. What if students use AI for research but writes it themselves? How do we handle revision tools? What about translation? But no one questioned whether we should do this because they'd actually been part of creating it and because we'd framed it as a starting point for a conversation, not a rigid rule book. Now, one teacher put it perfectly. The red, the amber, the green category made expectations easy to communicate and understand. Students were clearer about AI, what was supporting their learning, rather than just replacing their thinking. And the head of the school's response after this training was, she said, very shrewdly done, Vaughn. You did a serious amount of work in the background, consulted with all the different stakeholders and developed examples for practice for your community, and it landed perfectly. No pushback and no resistance. Because people don't resist clarity. They resist being told what to do without understanding the reason of why. Here's what I'm seeing across schools right now. The ones with the most comprehensive AI policies have the worst implementation. Teachers don't know where to start. There's 47 pages of what-if scenarios. The schools with the simplest frameworks have confident teachers and engaged students. Now, why is that? Because complexity is a feature of fear, not thoroughness. When you're scared of getting it wrong, you try to control every variable. You write your policies that cover every possible edge case. You leverage detection systems to catch every possible violation. But students don't read your 15 pages of this AI policy that's specific for them, and the teachers drowning in the work don't have time to reference it. And if you just hand them this policy without involving them in creating it, they'll nod in that staff meeting and ignore it the next day. Simple systems scale. Complex systems stall. Co-created systems get implemented and dictated systems get resisted. These 5 things you should do when your school returns on Monday. 1. Communicate expectations before tasks. Don't assume students know. Tell them explicitly. Is this red, amber, or green? Takes 30 seconds, saves hours of confusion. Number 2, ask, is this true? Before accusing. AI detector flags false positives consistently. There's many arguments about it, much research on there, but that's a topic for another video. I've seen students accused of cheating because they wrote well. Start the conversation, not interrogation. Number 3, stop trying to control the uncontrollable. You can't stop students from using AI at home. You can design assessments that require genuine understanding and not just text generation. Number 4, and this is the one that matters the most, involve people before you implement. You can have the best framework in the world, but if people feel it is done to them instead of with them, it'll fail. And the 5th, don't assume communication equals understanding. After you've communicated expectations, check and ask. What does red mean for this task? What is your understanding from this? What questions do you have? The conversations after you communicate is often the more important than the communication itself. Now here's what nobody's actually talking about. Where else in your school are you dictating instead of collaborating? A new assessment policy. Did you ask your teachers what they need, or did you tell them what to do? Your behavior management changes. Did students have input? Were they informed? Parent communication expectations. Did you consult, or did you just mandate? The pattern is everywhere once you see it. We exhaust ourselves creating these systems that people resist, and instead of co-creating systems that are actually used. So here's the thing. You just learned the traffic light system, but I can hear what you're thinking. Why this just makes students lazy? If AI is allowed, aren't they just going to let ChatGPT do all the thinking for them? Well, that's the next problem. And I recorded this entire episode with Ryan Noonan breaking down what's actually happening when you use AI in a classroom. No theory, just real data. I'll link this in description so you can have a look there or here. Go watch that one next. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, effort equals results.